Are you sure this is the right exit? My wife, Emily, asked, glancing nervously at the GPS screen. We had been driving for hours, and the exhaustion was starting to wear on both of us. Positive, I replied, though my own confidence was starting to waver. We should be there soon. The road was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the dashboard lights and the occasional passing car. Emily's unease seemed to echo my own as I took a deep breath and tried to focus on the road ahead. We had been arguing all day, our vacation plans overshadowed by tension. It was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, but instead, it had become a battleground. Suddenly, a deer leapt onto the road. I barely had time to react. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The car skidded and then, with a bone-jarring impact, we collided with the animal. The world spun as the airbags deployed, and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I was disoriented, my head throbbing. The first thing I noticed was the strange, sterile smell of the hospital. I tried to move, but pain shot through my body, anchoring me to the bed. My vision cleared, and I saw Emily sitting in a chair beside my bed, her face pale and her eyes red. "Hey," I croaked, my voice rough and hoarse. "Hey," she replied, forcing a weak smile. "You're awake. What happened?" I asked, my throat dry. "Is everything okay?" Emily hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for the right words. "We were in an accident. You were unconscious for a while. They said you have a concussion and some bruised ribs. I've been so worried." I tried to process her words, my mind struggling to piece together the events. "And you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Just a few bruises. Nothing serious." I could see the strain in her face, and it made me uneasy. "You seem upset. Is there something you're not telling me?" She shook her head vigorously. "No, it's just the accident. It's been a long night." Before I could respond, a nurse entered the room. "Mr. Thompson, I need to take some more tests. I'll be back shortly." As the nurse left, I turned back to Emily. "Is there something going on, Em? You seem distant." Emily opened her mouth to speak but then hesitated. "It's just been a tough day. Let's not talk about it right now." Her evasiveness made me more concerned. I wanted to press her, but the pain in my head made it hard to think clearly. The nurse returned and began her examination, leaving Emily and me alone again. Emily's phone buzzed on the side table, and she quickly picked it up, glancing at the screen with an unreadable expression. "I need to make a call," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of panic. I watched as she stepped outside the room, her phone pressed to her ear. I could hear snippets of her conversation through the thin hospital walls, but I couldn't make out the full context. The tone of her voice, urgent, almost pleading, piqued my curiosity. Minutes later, Emily returned, her demeanor changed. She forced a smile and took a seat by my bedside. "Sorry about that. Just had to take care of some things." I tried to push aside my doubts and focus on my recovery. "It's okay. Can you just stay here with me for a while? I don't want to be alone." "Of course," Emily said, her voice soft. She took my hand in hers, but the warmth of her touch felt different, distant, as if she was holding back. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the sense of foreboding that had settled over me. I wanted to believe everything was going to be fine, that the accident was just a bump in the road. But Emily's strange behavior and the fragments of her phone conversation left me uneasy. As I drifted back to sleep, my thoughts were plagued with questions and doubts. The accident had been a nightmare, but the true horror, I was beginning to suspect, lay in the secrets Emily was keeping from me. When I woke up the next morning, the hospital room was bathed in a muted, gray light filtering through the blinds. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a constant reminder of my fragile state. Emily was still beside me, her head resting on the edge of the bed. I could tell she hadn't slept much, and her eyes were red-rimmed. "Morning," I said softly, trying not to startle her. Emily stirred and looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of relief and fatigue. "Hey, you're up. How are you feeling?" "Better," I replied, though I was still in pain. "But I need to ask you something." Her expression tightened, and she shifted in her chair. "What's wrong?" "Last night," I said slowly, "you seemed different. And the phone call you made, I couldn't help but overhear bits of it. Is there something you're not telling me?" Emily's face went pale, and she fidgeted with the hem of her sweater. "I told you, it was just a rough night. I was dealing with some personal stuff." I pressed on, though every word felt like a struggle. "It sounded more serious than that. You were almost crying. What's going on, Emily?" Before Emily could respond, a doctor entered the room, disrupting the conversation. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. How are we feeling today?" I looked at the doctor, grateful for the interruption. Still in pain, but I'm getting by. Can you tell me what's next? The doctor nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. We're going to keep you under observation for another day to monitor your concussion. We'll also run some more tests to make sure there's no internal bleeding or further complications. As the doctor went through the details of my treatment, Emily stood up and walked to the window, her back turned to me. I could see her shoulders shaking slightly, and my heart sank. Whatever she was hiding, it was clearly weighing heavily on her. Once the doctor left, I turned my attention back to Emily. You need to talk to me, Emily. I can't go on like this, not knowing what's happening. Emily took a deep breath and finally faced me, her eyes brimming with tears. I didn't want to tell you like this, but there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. My heart raced, and I braced myself for whatever was coming. What is it? Emily's voice trembled. I've been seeing someone else. For the past few months. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, struggling to comprehend the gravity of what she was saying. What? You've been cheating on me? Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. It started out as a mistake, something I thought I could handle, but it got out of control. I should have told you sooner. I felt a cold numbness spreading through me. How could you do this? After everything we've been through? Emily's shoulders slumped as she sat back down, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was unhappy, and I made terrible choices. I'm so sorry. I wanted to yell, to scream at her for the betrayal, but I was too exhausted. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, trying to process the reality of our situation. The accident had been a catastrophe, but this revelation was an emotional wrecking ball. After a long, painful pause, I spoke. What happens now? Emily wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to make things right. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. I looked at her, seeing the woman I loved but also the one who had betrayed me. I need time to think, Emily. This is a lot to process. She nodded, her face a mixture of guilt and hope. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, trying to make things right. As Emily left the room to give me some space, I was left alone with my thoughts. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the agony in my heart. I had to face the fact that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built a life with, had been living a lie. The road ahead was uncertain, and the future seemed impossibly bleak. In the quiet of the hospital room, I grappled with the enormity of what had just happened. The accident had been the catalyst for uncovering a deeper betrayal, and as I lay there, I knew that both my recovery and our relationship were in jeopardy. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits, tests, and strained conversations. My physical recovery was slow but steady, and the doctors assured me I would be able to leave the hospital soon. Emotionally, however, I was a wreck. Emily visited every day, bringing me books and magazines to pass the time. Each visit was a mixture of awkward silence and forced conversation. She tried to act normal, but the tension was palpable. I could see the strain in her eyes and hear it in her voice whenever she spoke. It was clear she was struggling, but so was I. One afternoon, as Emily sat beside me holding a magazine, I decided to confront the situation head on. We need to talk about what's next, I said, breaking the silence. Emily looked up, her face lined with worry. I know. I've been trying to think of what to say, but it's so hard. I don't want to just sit here pretending everything's okay, I continued. We need to figure out what we're going to do now. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she set the magazine aside. I understand. I've been thinking about it too. I know I've betrayed your trust in a way that's hard to repair. Do you think we can fix this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I mean, is there even a chance for us to move past this? Emily's eyes filled with tears. I hope so. I really do. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. But I know it's not going to be easy. It's going to take time, and I need to be honest with you about everything. Tell me everything, I said firmly. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Emily took a deep breath. The person I was seeing, his name is David. We met at work, and it started as a friendship. But it became something more. I didn't want it to, but it did. I've been seeing him for a few months now. I'm so sorry. I processed her words, trying to piece together the betrayal. How long have you been hiding this from me? Did you ever think about telling me? Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I've been trying to find the right time, but it never seemed right. I thought maybe I could stop seeing him and everything would go back to normal. But I was wrong. I should have told you sooner. I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. I looked at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the image of the faithful partner I had believed in. What are you going to do about David? Emily hesitated. I've ended things with him. I realized that I was being unfair to both of you. I'm trying to fix things, to be honest with you and to make amends. I could see the remorse in her eyes, but it wasn't enough to erase the hurt. What about us? Where do we go from here? Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. I want us to get counseling. I know it's not going to be easy, but I think it's the only way we can move forward. If you're willing, I want to work on rebuilding our trust. I want to prove to you that I can change. I considered her words carefully. Counseling might be a good idea. But I need to know that you're committed to this. I can't go through this again. Emily nodded earnestly. I am committed. I want to fix this. I love you, and I don't want to lose you. Her words were hopeful, but they couldn't erase the damage done. I knew that healing would be a long and difficult process. The betrayal had left scars, and I had to decide if I was willing to work through them. Before I could respond, a knock on the door interrupted us. It was Sarah, one of Emily's close friends. Her presence was unexpected and added another layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. Hey, Emily, Sarah said, stepping into the room. I thought I'd come by and check on you. How are you doing? Emily stood up, visibly distressed by the interruption. Sarah, I'm glad you're here. I'm just trying to sort things out. Sarah's eyes flickered to me, then back to Emily. I hope everything's okay. It's complicated, Emily replied, her voice heavy with emotion. Sarah looked at me with a sympathetic expression. If you need anything, let me know. I'm here for you, both of you. I appreciated the offer but knew that Sarah's presence wouldn't solve the deeper issues we were facing. Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. As Sarah left, Emily and I were left alone again. The room felt heavier now, filled with the weight of unresolved emotions and difficult decisions. Emily took my hand, her touch gentle. I know it's a lot to take in. I'm here for the long haul, if you're willing to give me a chance. I squeezed her hand, trying to muster a small amount of hope amidst the turmoil. We'll see. For now, let's take it one step at a time. Emily nodded, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. We both knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of possibility. The path to healing would be long and uncertain, but it was a path we had to walk together. The days in the hospital dragged on, each one a blend of routine medical procedures and fraught conversations with Emily. My physical condition improved, but my emotional state remained fragile. The idea of counseling loomed large, but it felt like a distant hope amidst the chaos. One afternoon, Emily came in with a somber look on her face. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation, she said, sitting down next to me. I've arranged for us to see a counselor next week. I hope you're still open to it. I'm willing to try, I said cautiously. But I need to know that you're serious about this. It can't just be about making amends, it needs to be about real change. Emily nodded earnestly. I understand. I'm committed to doing the work. I want to be honest with you and show you that I'm dedicated to making things right. Before we could delve deeper into our plans, a knock on the door interrupted us. It was David, the man Emily had been seeing. His presence was unexpected, and it immediately added a new layer of tension to the room. Is it all right if I come in? David asked hesitantly, his gaze flicking between Emily and me. Emily's face went white, and she looked at me, clearly torn. Do you want to see him? I took a deep breath. If he has something to say, let's hear it. David stepped in, his demeanor apologetic. I know this is awkward, but I wanted to come and apologize in person. I never intended to cause so much pain. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but it didn't erase the hurt. Why did you come here, David? What do you want to achieve by being here? David shifted uncomfortably. I felt I needed to explain myself. I didn't want to be a coward who hides behind a phone call or text. I want to be clear about my remorse. Emily looked at David with a mixture of guilt and sadness. We've been trying to figure things out, and this is the last thing I wanted. But I understand why you're here. David's voice was steady. I want you to know that I'm deeply sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt either of you. I hope you can find a way to move past this, even if it's without me. I studied David, trying to gauge the sincerity of his words. It's not about forgiveness right now. It's about rebuilding trust and trying to move forward. David nodded, his expression resigned. I understand. I just wanted to be honest and offer my apologies. He left soon after, leaving Emily and me alone once more. The encounter was unsettling but also necessary. It forced me to confront the reality of the situation and the people involved. Emily took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. That was intense. Yeah, I said, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. It's hard to process everything at once. I want to believe in the possibility of healing, but it's overwhelming. Emily reached out and took my hand. I know. It's going to be a long road, but I want to walk it with you. I'm committed to making things right. I looked at her, the woman I once thought I knew completely. I want to believe you, Emily. I really do. But it's going to take time. We need to work on this together. Emily nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. As the days passed, our interactions were a mix of hopeful conversations and painful reflections. We both knew that rebuilding our relationship would be a marathon, not a sprint. The counseling sessions were set to begin, and while they offered a glimmer of hope, they also highlighted the enormity of the task ahead. One evening, as I lay in bed, I found myself reflecting on the events that had transpired. The accident had been a turning point, exposing the cracks in our relationship. Now, the path to healing was fraught with uncertainty and emotional upheaval. Emily came into the room, her face showing a mix of determination and vulnerability. I've been thinking about our first counseling session. I'm nervous, but I'm also hopeful. I want to make this work. I looked at her, my heart heavy with mixed emotions. I'm nervous too. But I think it's a step in the right direction. We need to face this together, no matter how difficult it might be. Emily nodded, her expression one of quiet resolve. We will. We'll take it one day at a time.